Okay, so today we will continue from page 143. So in the last two classes, we discussed cellular respiration, the process of respiration taking place in the cells, this equation. Okay, and then now um, we will start from page 143, gas exchange in humans. Right, so just a quick recap. This was the respiration equation, right? And now I discussed that. So these are the two reactants. This is glucose, oxygen, giving us carbon dioxide, water, and energy. So our reactants, and this is vital for the life processes. This is vital for the survival of cells, right? So now what is bringing these two substances? Of course, our transport system, which is the circulatory system. Okay, and then glucose is of course coming from the digestive tract, from the digestive system, where after the digestion of food, glucose is absorbed by the blood and is taken eventually to the cells, right? I mean, passing through the liver and everything. And then oxygen is brought from the respiratory system by the circulatory system, right? So you can see where these three systems are merging in function with each other, right? So now when the cell has glucose and oxygen, it burns to give carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Now, energy is what we want for the vital processes in the cell and to maintain body temperature, but then these two are waste products. We need to remove them. If we do not remove, if the cells accumulate these two substances, it is poisonous and it is harmful for the cell. So they need to be removed. So how do we remove them? Now, carbon dioxide is predominantly removed by the respiratory system, back, okay, back from where oxygen came, back, okay, and water is removed by the kidneys, okay, in the form of urine and, sweating, and there are other ways. So in this whole equation, we are dealing with two gases, okay, one is the reactant, the other is the product. One is entering, the other is leaving. Okay, so this is where we have that exchange, gaseous exchange going on. This gaseous exchange actually takes place at in the organs called lungs, right? And the actual site of this gaseous exchange, meaning oxygen entering into the blood and carbon dioxide leaving the blood, is taking place through gas exchange barrier, also called alveolar capillary barrier, and is taking place at the level of alveoli, right? And so let's talk about this. And okay, before we start with the respiratory system, I also want to mention that the movement of these gases in and out of the blood is purely through passive diffusion. The word passive meant, Sundus?
Without using energy from respiration.
Right, without using energy, right? And what's the opposite of passive?
Active.
Active, meaning requiring energy, right? So I will talk about this later. Okay, we will talk about this at the end of the chapter. Let's start with the respiratory system. What is now breathing? Remember at the beginning of my the beginning of my first class on this unit, I differentiated between respiration and breathing, right? And so breathing was the taking in of oxygen, and not taking in of oxygen, taking in of air, basically. Air is a mixture of gases, okay? It has other gases as well, not just oxygen. So breathing is that movement of body which takes in the air inside it and then removes it, and then removes it or pushes it outside, back, okay? So now let's start with the respiratory system. Now the respiratory system, the whole thing is called the respiratory system. It starts with the nose. It starts with the nasal cavity. Now, well, you can take in air even through your mouth, okay, in cases of emergency. Yes, you can if your nose is blocked, if your nose is not working for some reason. You can use your mouth, but mouth is not made for this purpose. The mouth is not specialized or adapted for this function. The mouth is adapted for, what? Yes,
Eating.
eating, right? Ingestion, right? Ingestion. So, and which organ is specialized or adapted for taking in air is the nose, right? So therefore, it is preferable to use your nose for inhaling. What does the term inhaling mean? Take in air, okay? Inhalation and inspiration, both same thing, okay? Or exhalation and expiration, same thing, okay? Two words for same thing. Okay, so nasal cavity. Now let's talk about the nose. And do you guys have questions? Let me check. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen again. Okay, so this is the respiratory system, the whole thing. Now let's first appreciate all the different parts, and then we will discuss each and every structure and how they are adapted for their particular function. So let's start with the nose. So inside the nose, we have the nasal cavity, okay? The nasal cavity, and this pink wall sort of thing that you can see is the division between the two nostrils. Yes, septum, it's called the septum, but okay, don't worry about it. So your nose starts here, okay? And then just behind the nose is pharynx. Follow the labels. This whole thing, starting from the back of the mouth, starting from the back of the nose, back of the mouth, and then back of the larynx. Now, what is larynx? So appreciate the pharynx first, okay? So first nose, then pharynx, and then is larynx. Now, larynx is just above the trachea, and also appreciate the trachea. It's a windpipe, also called a windpipe. It is extending all the way down from the mouth, or from the pharynx and larynx, okay, into the thorax, right? Now, trachea, you can recognize trachea with the help of rings. It has the rings are very easily visible, so they will help you in recognizing trachea, okay? And then there's this flap of tissue at the top of larynx, okay? Larynx is also called voice box because it has vocal cords. So when we speak, the sound is pushed through the voice box and it vibrates the vocal cords, thus producing sound, right? So larynx is that voice box just under the epiglottis, or just beneath the epiglottis. Now, epiglottis is a flap, is a tissue flap which shuts the trachea while swallowing. Now, I'll just show you the swallowing reflex as well. So it protects the trachea from the food entering into it while we are swallowing. Okay, if we did not have this epiglottis, the food might have entered the trachea instead of the esophagus, and that would cause choking because the air passages would be blocked and we would not be able to breathe. Okay. Okay, so nose, pharynx, then from the pharynx. Now this is the passage for the inhaled air. I am telling you the passage for the inhaled air. So when we inhale, the air first enters the nose. The space behind the nose is nasal cavity, then into the pharynx. Then if you are not eating, epiglottis is open. I mean, it's not covering the larynx, then larynx, and then trachea. Then go down the trachea, you will have two branches, bronchi. Bronchus is singular, plural is bronchi, and then once at the level of bronchi, the respiratory system is now inside the lungs. And then inside the lungs, the bronchi divide further into smaller bronchioles. Okay? Then these bronchioles further small down, they become further small into small air sacs, called alveolar sacs or alveoli, where the actual gas exchange takes place. Right. Okay. So this is the whole respiratory system. Now we will talk about each structure in detail. So let's talk about the nose first. Okay, there are three functions of the nose. What are the three functions? Does anybody remember? Does anybody know? What are the three functions of the nose? Use of pharynx. Okay, pharynx connects the different parts such as nose to the mouth and nose to the other tubes such as the trachea. So it's like a connecting passage. It's connecting all these tubes and all these different cavities. Yes, Amina, clean air. Yes, okay. Yeah, my question was, what is the function of nose in, I mean, why, how is it adapted? What is the function of nose in with respect to inhaled air? With respect to inhaled air. So yes, one is filtration. Very good. Yes, Sundar said, say it loudly.
Filters, moistens, and warms the air.
Right. There's three jobs. Okay, three jobs. Let me share my video. Yes, the three functions of nose in with respect to inhaled air are warming the air, moistening the air, and filtration of the air. Now, how does it perform all these jobs? Right, how does it perform all these jobs? Now, the inhaled air contains dust particles, pollens, and bacteria, maybe viruses if there are viruses like these days. But yeah, these are the three main things that we need to get rid of before the air can enter the lungs. Now remember, lungs are vital organs. All these structures above the lungs are trying to protect it, okay? And the fact that the respiratory passage is getting smaller and smaller and smaller as you're going from the nose to the lungs is another way of protecting the lungs, because the large particles will be trapped at the top, right? So only very fine microscopic particles might be able to enter the alveoli, but otherwise the larger particles would be trapped somewhere at the top. So this is a protective mechanism. This is an example of first line of defense. Remember in immunity, we did first line of defense and second line of defense, and then we did barriers. Remember, skin was one, and then acid in the stomach was another example. And then third is this. Okay, the third is the mucociliary, Okay, so I'll talk about this in detail just a bit. So how does the nose warm and moisten the air? Now, to understand this, let's talk about the cells which are lining the respiratory tract, okay? The cells lining the respiratory tract is made up of an epithelium. Now, what is epithelium? Epithelium is the lining of cells that lines, yes, that lines different cavities in our body, such as the respiratory epithelium, the digestive tract epithelium. All these tracts, all these cavities are lined by a protective lining of cells, and they are called epithelium, okay? They are lining of cells, and their primary function is protection, also transport of substances, right? Now, the respiratory epithelium, again, it is a lining of cells, which is protecting as well as, I mean, in the upper respiratory tract, it is mostly protective. And then if you come at the level of alveoli, there's also transport going on, gaseous exchange going on, right? So now there are two types of cells lining the respiratory tract. One of the two types of cells is goblet cells, okay? And their job is to produce mucus and water, okay? Mucus is that sticky, slimy substance that is released from your nose, especially, if you have flu. Yeah, if you have flu, you can. So that thing is called mucus, and it's slimy and it's sticky. The reason why it is sticky and slimy is because it wants to trap the dust particles, especially the bigger dust particles. They get stuck. They get stuck. And then this mucus does not allow those particles to reach the lungs, right? Because it holds onto those dust particles, okay? Now this water evaporates as the inhaled air passes above this layer of water. And if you remember the process of evaporation from physics, remember the most energetic molecules leave the liquid, right? And so the water vapor molecules that have evaporated are the most energetic ones, right? So that fat warms the air that we inhale. Why is it important for the air to be warmed before it enters into our body? Because if cold air is allowed to enter, our cells, especially, you know, the alveolar epithelial cells, they will be exposed to that low temperature, because that cold air will come into contact with the alveolar epithelial cells, and that low temperature is harmful. It's harmful for those epithelial cells, okay? Because their survival depends upon the enzymes, right? And enzymes' optimum temperature is the body temperature. So if you go above or below that body temperature, it's bad for the cells, and enzymes stop working, right? So you now understand how the inhaled air is moistened, because the most energetic water vapor molecules are evaporating, and so they are moistening and at the same time also warming, okay, bringing the inhaled air to our body temperature. Now, when we are breathing through the mouth, we are depriving ourselves and our lungs of this protection, which is only provided by the nose, not by the mouth. The mouth does not have cilia. The mouth does not have mucus and all of this stuff. So mouth is not made for this purpose. But in case of emergency, a mouth can be used. Okay. So this is so at the level of nose, we have like a big visible hair, okay? Those hair are easily visible. But then as you go down, we have cilia. We don't have these big hair beyond nose, right? And then comes the function of cilia. Cilia are very tiny and they're microscopic because they are part of a cell, okay? So they are just as tiny as cells are. And so they are microscopic and we cannot see them without the microscope, but their function is the same as the hair, you know, almost. They also trap, now they will trap little smaller particles. So can you see how at different levels Allah has given us protection? How at different levels. If particles bypass one barrier of protection, there are so many more to go. Okay, so now cilia first of all will trap the particles, okay, and after trapping, and now these cilia are all embedded within a layer of mucus. And I'm going to show you an animation. I'm going to show you a video on mucociliary animation, how the cilia work along with the mucus to protect our lungs from these three components, these three culprits: dust particles, pollens, and bacteria. Okay, so cilia trap the dust particles and then they are embedded in the mucus. So that means the dust particles have been trapped in the sticky mucus. And then the flicking movement of the cilia will push the mucus towards the back of the throat, right? So the lower respiratory tract cilia will push the dust particles toward upwards, because the throat is, the back of the mouth is upwards for the lower respiratory tract. And the cilia of the upper respiratory tract will flick downwards because the back of the throat is downwards, right? Yeah, and the back of the throat is called pharynx. Back of the throat is called pharynx. Now from pharynx, they can easily be then swallowed easily be swallowed into the esophagus, right? And then into the stomach. And in the stomach, there are digestive enzymes and HCl, the very strong HCl. So acid plus enzymes destroy if any bacteria or viruses have entered. Okay, that's why they say one of the preventive measures against corona is to drink lots and lots of water, because it will push that virus into your digestive tract. And that means entry into the stomach, and a stomach has acid and digestive enzymes. Okay, mucus, okay, let me check your questions. Mucus is swallowed automatically. Yes, I will talk about swallowing. It's a reflex action. I don't know if you remember from your nervous system that you did in grade 7. A reflex action is an action which does not involve the brain, but only the spinal cord. And yes, it is almost automatic without you thinking. Okay, so yes, for swallowing, you don't need to think. The reflex actions just need a stimulus. So any food touching our soft palate is the stimulus that will elicit this swallowing reflex, and it would cause a swallowing. Yeah, okay, it's okay, Zainab Ehsan. It's okay, don't confuse yourself. But I hope that even those students who have recently entered into grade 7 have watched my first 2 videos or classes on this respiration. Okay, it's okay, you can do this chapter even in the beginning of grade 7. It's up to you. Okay, can you please repeat the reason why air has to be warmed? Okay, air has to be warmed so that it is at the same temperature as the body, because if it is lower than the body temperature, it would be harmful for the alveolar epithelial cells, because they will be exposed to cold air and their enzymes won't work. Okay, okay, now so let me move on. Am I sharing my screen? No. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Okay, so let me show you this video of mucociliary appearance. So in this video, I want you to appreciate and pay attention to how the cilia are flicking and how they are all flicking in a synchronous manner. You know what synchronous mean? Like one group of cilia would flick in one particular direction at the same time, and the other group will flick in another direction at the same time. So their flicking is coordinated. It is coordinated in such a beautiful way that it makes sure that the whole layer of mucus within which they are embedded is pushed or is moved towards the back of the throat, which is pharynx. Okay, now let's start. Now these are the dust particles and pollen. The bigger particles are pollen, and these are cilia which are waving. Okay, and now this layer of fluid at the top of cilia is the mucus. Okay, which has these dust particles and pollen in the. Now can you see the wave-like action of cilia? Yeah, and you can see the mucus now taking the dust particles away, right? Right. Okay. I also want you, okay, I'm showing this video again. I also want you to differentiate between the 2 types of cells. One type of cell is the one that has cilia, right? You could see the cilia waving. But there was another type of cells. They were big, large, purple. They did not have cilia. Notice them. I'm showing the video again. Those are the goblet cells. So remember, goblet cells do not have cilia. So we have 2 types of cells. One type of cell has cilia. The other type of cell are goblet cells, and they're responsible for secreting mucus. Again, I'm showing you again. I want you to see the 2 types of cells. So can you see the cilia? So okay, all of these, and then can you see these purple patches? These purple patches, again, I'll show you. Yeah, this is the goblet cell that does not have cilia. Can you appreciate them? Yeah, from these goblet cells is mucus being secreted. Can you see these purple? They are not flicking. Okay, they are the goblet cells. Okay, so there are two types of cells. One are ciliated, the other are goblet cells, which are responsible for secreting mucus. This is another picture. This is a diagram. So you can see two types of cells. One is dark yellow, the dark yellow with these vesicles containing mucus. Yeah, the dark yellow cell containing these circles. These circles are vesicles that have mucus, okay? Mucus is that sticky, slimy substance which is responsible for holding on to the dust particles. And then these light colored cells are ciliated cells, and they have these hair-like projections at their top surface. These are called cilia, and they flick, and their job is to move the mucus towards the back of the throat. Okay, and mucus does the job of sticking or trapping the dust particles. Okay, now this is another diagram. So you can see the cilia embedded within this layer of mucus. Can you see? And then these particles are getting trapped. So this is the filtration process. This is how the cilia are filtering the dust particles, and then the mucus would take them to the back of the throat, right? Okay, so this is the job of the nose. Now let's move on to trachea. Okay, let's move on to trachea. Now what does a trachea look like? Let me show you what a trachea looks like. This is a trachea. Okay, this is how trachea looks like from the front. This is the front view. Okay, you can see the rings, the cartilaginous rings. What is the function of these rings? Yeah, to keep the trachea open so that even when we are breathing in and there is low pressure in our respiratory tract. See, when we are breathing in, there is low pressure in our respiratory tract. If these rings were not there, trachea could have collapsed. Collapsed meaning closed. Collapsed meaning closed, okay? Just like esophagus is all the time closed except for when we swallow. So this trachea would also be closed if there were no rings. So these rings keep the trachea open all the time, right? But these rings are not complete. They are C-shaped. Can you see? They are half circle. At the back, the cartilage is missing. Meaning at the back, I mean, the ring is not complete. It's an inverted C sort of, right? Now, why is that? Very good. Santosh, say, answer loudly.
This is to allow the expansion of esophagus during swallowing.
Right, because esophagus is right behind trachea. Right behind trachea, esophagus lies. And so when we are swallowing, the food is passing through esophagus. It needs some space, right? So to allow for that space so that food can easily pass through the esophagus, right? And also, you can see how the bronchi and then the bronchioles are dividing. Better picture. This picture is missing the alveoli, but appreciate the branching, how extensively they are branching and how their size is decreasing, how the diameter of the tubes is decreasing as you're proceeding from the trachea to bronchi, to bronchioles, and eventually the alveolar sac. Okay, let me also show you another picture here. Wait, where I want to show you how the diameter changes from now. What have they done? You know, they have taken the respiratory passage all the way from the level of bronchus, almost trachea, all the way to alveoli. And appreciate how the diameter is decreasing. So at the bronchus, you can see that the tube is this windpipe, you can call this bronchus. The diameter is so big. And as we are proceeding down, you can see that the amount of cartilage is decreasing. Can you see the amount of cartilage is decreasing as we are going towards the alveoli? And as the passage is getting narrower and narrower and narrower, till at this point, there are no further cartilages. So it's simple membrane, right? Epithelium again. And so at the end, you have Yeah, single cell thick. A single cell thick is, I think, at the level of alveoli only. Yeah, because, you know, then it would be really delicate. It would become really fragile. So, and then these, at the end, you have these grape-like, balloon-like, ball-like, you can call it anything, bubble-like, around swellings, sort of. And these are the alveolar sacs, or the alveoli, okay? Okay, I also want you to look at this picture. This is showing how the same alveoli is surrounded by the capillary network. Can you see the extensive capillary network? Each and every alveolar sac has its own bed of capillary network, okay? So you can see the deoxygenated blood entering through the pulmonary artery, right? At the left top corner, you can see the blue colored artery that is bringing the deoxygenated blood. And then after it gets oxygenated, the oxygenated blood leaves through the pulmonary vein back to the heart, right? Okay, we will talk about this in detail later, okay? So now let me talk about a little bit about the swallowing reflex. Swallowing reflex. What happens when we swallow? Now, let me give you a little. So when we swallow, the food enters our mouth, and as we chew and we push it towards the back of the mouth, it touches our soft palate. Soft palate is right at the back of the roof of the mouth. You know that roof of the mouth, real back of the roof of the mouth is soft palate. Why is it called soft? Is because the front part of the roof of the mouth is hard. It's hard and bony. And so where it gets soft, that's what the soft palate is. And when the food touches it, a reflex action is stimulated. You know, if you touch that soft palate, even with your finger or with your toothbrush or with anything, you will have a gag reflex. Gag reflex means you would want to vomit, right? But if the food touches it in the right way, it causes a swallowing reflex. And so the epiglottis, which is that flap of tissue, it covers the trachea so as to protect it so that food doesn't enter it and we don't get choked, and the food then simply enters into esophagus. So with this explanation in mind, look at this. So this green thing is the food, okay? Now soft palate is right the most posterior, the most back part of the roof of the mouth. So you can see how the food is touching it. And you can see that the epiglottis is covering the trachea so that food can easily enter into the esophagus without causing any hazard or choking. Okay, so look at it. How the food is touching the soft palate, reflex action is stimulated. The epiglottis covers the trachea and the food easily enters into the esophagus. Right. Okay, so I hope you got that. Okay. Okay, so okay, I want to also show you how a normal trachea looks like from inside. So we will be, this is like, this is an endoscopic video. Endoscopic is when you get inside, and there are laser cameras which are inserted inside the body to see if, you know, the structures are healthy and if they are inflamed or if there's anything, something wrong with them. So I will show you as we enter, you will see vocal cords. I want you to see how vocal cords look like. And then just under the vocal cords, so what is that place called where you have the vocal cords? Yes, that's called the voice box or the larynx. Okay, just under the larynx is, larynx is, what comes after larynx? Who will tell me? Yeah, what is under the larynx? I mean, trachea. Yes, very good, Hala. Okay, let's watch. So they are now getting in, okay? Now this is the vocal cord and they must be getting in through the mouth. So this is the vocal cord And the space under the vocal cord is the voice box, and under the voice box is the trachea. And you know where the trachea is beginning? Where you start seeing the rings. Where you start seeing the rings, that's trachea. So ring is a very good way of recognizing trachea. Okay. So can you feel this pulsation? What is this pulsating? The front wall. Let's watch this again. Let's watch this again. Can you see this pulsation? What is this pulsation? What is this? What is this pulsating? Okay. Celia pulsate. What pulsates? Now look at this. Look at this. Yes, yes, yes. Good job. Let me see who answered this. No, not breathing. No, heart. Heart is in front of trachea. Remember? Heart, or even the ascending aorta. The aorta, which is coming out. All these structures are right in front of the trachea, right? Okay, I should have shown you a picture where I did not get that. Okay, I don't know. If feeling hiccup has nothing to do with this topic. Hiccup is related to changes in the shape of the stomach. Okay, Nabil. Okay, now, okay, so I have done this. Okay, now let's talk a little about the alveoli. Okay, at the end of each bronchiole are tiny balloon-shaped air sacs called alveoli, where the actual gas exchange occurs. So before I show you anything, let me explain you. Yeah, is there any question? We can feel the trachea. Yes, we can feel the trachea in your neck. Okay, the part where you feel fine rings just above the notch. I don't know if I can tell you exactly through this online class, but okay. Yeah. Will we do the end of chapter question? Yes, we will. Inshallah, we will. Okay. So this is my humble attempt on making a diagram. I'm sorry, I'm not too artistic. Excuse my diagrams. I was not able to hear Sundus. What did you just say? Can you repeat that? I don't know what you're talking about. She just said that it was hard, and okay. So okay. So this is the nose, nasal cavity. Okay, this is nose, nasal cavity behind the nose, and then this is the mouth. So these are the two inlets to our respiratory system. Thank you, Atika. Okay, so this is what? You guys tell me. What will come after the nose? You guys help me. Come on. After nose, check the chat window. What comes after the nose? Come on. What comes here? Behind the nose should be nasopharynx. Yeah. Behind the nose and the mouth and the trachea. Okay, where did my trachea go? ये मेरा diagram थोड़ा गलत हो गया. I did not make the esophagus. Okay. So, okay, it doesn't matter. So this is here, this whole thing is pharynx. Okay. Then right this little box where you have the vocal cord, this is larynx. Then right after larynx are these rings, trachea, right? So this is my trachea. Okay. And then you have the bronchi, and these rings go like this, and then somewhere they stop. Yeah, maybe they stop here. Okay, so these are the rings and these are the bronchi, right? Now we are going to focus on this part. What is this? Alveolar sac. We are going to talk about gaseous exchange now. So this is the alveolar sac. So I'm going to zoom. I zoomed in. Okay, I zoomed in and I made this diagram. So I hope you can understand my diagram. By the way, this is the same diagram which is given in your book, 11.5. You can even look at this. 11.5. Same diagram I'm trying to make. Simplified. Okay. So this is the alveolar sac. So the air is coming in, right? And it is bringing in oxygen. It has other gases as well, but we are only concerned with oxygen. Yes, to some level, yes, Amna. Bronchi also have cartilaginous rings. Okay. At some level, the rings are gone, but they are not complete. Okay, the amount of cartilage decreases, so they are like semi-cartilaginous, not completely. Okay, most rings are in the trachea. Okay, so now oxygen. Now let's try to learn the structures that make this passage from the alveolar space. This is the alveolar space to the red blood cell, which is in the capillary. So this is my capillary, okay, and this is the alveolar sac. Okay, so oxygen is getting in. Now what is this blue thing? This is a film of moisture, a thin film of moisture. Why is this needed? Because oxygen in the form of gas cannot enter the cell. Oxygen in the form of gas cannot enter the cell, so it has to dissolve in water or some solution first, and only in a soluble solution form can it enter into the alveolar epithelial cells. Now I am calling these cells which are making the alveolar wall as alveolar epithelial cell. Okay, alveolar epithelial cell is the name of the cell that is making the alveolar wall. So oxygen first dissolved into this thin film of moisture, and then it entered into the alveolar epithelial cells, and we all appreciate that all the cells are surrounded by membrane, right? Plasma membrane, cell membrane. So yeah, so this is that cell membrane. Then this is basement membrane. Now you might wonder what this basement membrane is. Don't worry, this is just for support. You know, like these cells need some support to sit on, right? These are really single cells. These are really fragile, right? So this basement membrane is absolutely permeable to these gases, which need to move through oxygen, carbon dioxide, and you know, even the pollutant gases such as carbon monoxide and all of those, they can easily pass through. So yeah, small molecules can pass through. Okay. No, nitrogen is an inert. I mean, it doesn't react. So no, we have nothing to do with nitrogen. Nitrogen comes and goes. It doesn't participate in all of this. It comes and goes. Okay, there are many other gases. They come and go. Okay, they have nothing to do. So the concentration of the incoming air is the same as the concentration of the outgoing air when we talk about those. Yeah, concentration of those gases. Okay, so we have this thin film of moisture, alveolar epithelial cell. Then, you know, you can just omit these because these are just supporting structures. They are not contributing towards any transport process here or the diffusion process here. Okay, and they are permeable to all these gases. And these are just support structures, connective tissue, elastic fibers. They just support the lung. That's it. They have just support function. And then again, this is basement membrane on which the lining of the capillary wall cells are sitting. Like, you know, they need something to sit on. So these are called endothelial cell. You don't need to worry about it. You don't need to zoom out a little. I want them to look at the labelings as well. So endothelial cell is the cell which is lining the capillary wall. Okay. And then you have the red blood cell. So appreciate the sequence. Alveolar, so from the air, let's start from the air. Fluid dissolves in the fluid. Alveolar epithelial cell, okay, passing through the epithelial cell. Basement membranes, okay, this and this. And then the endothelial cell. So can you appreciate the sequence? Okay. Air, film of moisture, alveolar epithelial cells, basement membranes, endothelial cell, red blood cell. Eventually, red blood cells. Many times they ask you, how many cells does the oxygen molecule pass through? How many membranes does it pass through? So each cell will have two membranes. You know, like one for entering, one for getting out, then one for entering, one for getting out, and then for entering into red blood cell. Okay, so when we will do questions, then we will deal with it, but just remember this much for now. So now you understood this. This is called alveolar capillary membrane or alveolar capillary barrier, and this is the barrier which carries out diffusion. Yes, Hala, yes, 5 membranes. Yes, you can say that. We will not count basement membrane. Okay, don't say that this is a 6th membrane. No, no. This is not a, this is only, this is made up of proteins. Okay, this is just a support structure. Okay, now I want to talk about passive diffusion. So who's gonna tell me what are the factors affecting diffusion? Who's gonna tell me that? I want to recap real quick. I think we have done this before. I have discussed the factors affecting diffusion. The most important, I want in the order of priority, order of importance. The most important first. Yes, temperature, and temperature does affect the rate of diffusion. Yes, surface area, very good. And yes, temperature is also, yes, one of the factors. Yes. Yes, concentration is done. Ho gaya concentration, surface area ho gaya, temperature ho gaya. More distance. Very good, Huria Davar. Yes, distance that the molecules have to travel. And so distance, concentration gradient, surface area, right? These are the 3 most common factors that affect the rate of diffusion. There are other factors as well. I am sharing my, no, I'm not sharing my screen. I'm just showing my video. Okay. So what are the, can you uncap this for me? Between the alveoli and the capillaries. Hala, I just talked so much in detail on this. Basement membrane, elastic tissue. That's what is between the capillary and the alveolar wall. Okay, basement membrane and elastic tissue. Okay, which is for the support of the lungs. Okay, so what are the factors affecting diffusion? So yes, you guys said distance that a substance has to pass through. So greater the distance, what? Faster the diffusion. Slower. Yes, good job. Yes, Hala. Concentration gradient. Concentration gradient. How does concentration gradient affect diffusion? Higher the concentration gradient, faster the rate of diffusion. It's just like this. Concentration gradient. By the way, Sundus tried to explain diffusion in a video that I have posted on my channel, and she has used her own analogies, absolutely her own analogies, but they are not bad. They're good. You might want to check them out. Okay, so concentration differences is like this is high concentration, for example, and this is low concentration. So steeper the difference, quicker will be the fall. Think of it that way. Okay, quicker will be the fall. So higher the concentration difference, faster the rate of diffusion. Okay, then surface area. More area available, so more molecules can pass from one solution to another at the same time. So it would be faster, right? Now there are these other factors as well that affect diffusion. But in case of respiratory system within the human body, these factors cannot be controlled and these factors cannot be changed. For example, molecular mass. The heavier a molecule, the slower will be its movement, the slower will be its diffusion. But in case of respiration, we are dealing with carbon dioxide and oxygen. Now, there's nothing we can do about their molecular mass. Oxygen will stay oxygen, carbon dioxide will stay carbon dioxide, and there's nothing you can do about it. Solubility. The more soluble the substance is, faster will be the diffusion. Okay? Temperature. More temperature you provide, meaning more kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is the energy of motion, so that means the molecules can move faster. Solvent density. Denser the solvent, difficult it is for the molecules to move through, because they will have to cruise through. I mean, they will face greater resistance. But in our case, in our respiratory system, we are dealing with only water. So solvent is water. So these factors will not be considered in our discussion of respiratory system. We will talk about these three factors only: distance, concentration gradient, and surface area. And now I also explained you the alveolar capillary barrier or the membrane. Now let's talk about how that barrier is adapted and how is it helping in diffusion, keeping these three factors in mind. Okay, so let's talk about the first factor: distance a substance has to pass through. How do you think the barrier, let me give you guys a chance to think. Yes, how do you think this alveolar capillary barrier is making sure that the molecules travel least distance as possible? Yes, very good. Sundus, say it loudly.
Because it's single cell thick.
Loudly, so that they all, yes, Amana, yes, yeah, no, say it.
Because it's single cell thick.
Because you know all the there are two cells, right? There were two cells. There are only two cells that the oxygen molecule has to pass through. One is alveolar epithelial, other is the endothelial, right? The capillary wall. These are the only two cells the molecule has to pass through. If there were a lot of cellular layers, then it would be problem. It would take longer, right? And so the gaseous exchange won't be efficient. So the gaseous exchange membrane is extremely thin. Yes, single cell thick. It is extremely thin, so the distance the gases have to travel is extremely small. Also, remember this picture that I showed you. This picture that I showed you. Now I'm again sharing my screen. Did you see how closely how close these capillary networks are to these alveolar sacs? Where did that picture go? Yeah, this one, last one. Can you see how these capillaries are all attached onto those alveolar sacs? So there is nothing between the capillary and the alveoli except for the basement membrane and the elastic tissue, thin layer, except for that basement membrane. And basement membrane is nothing but just protein. So you can see the distance is so small. So the molecules don't have to travel any distance. And you can see that the capillaries are all attached to the alveolar sac. So they are in close proximity. Okay, now let's talk about the surface area. Now looking at this structure, looking at this picture, what two things are ensuring that the surface area available for gaseous exchange is extensive, is large? Yes. Yes. I'm waiting for the answers. How is the structure ensuring that the surface area is large? Extensive capillary network and these microscopic alveoli. Yeah, extensive alveoli and extensive capillary network. Both of them are extensive and extensively branching. Okay, branching, so that a lot of surface area is available for the gaseous exchange. In fact, your book says that the total surface area of all the alveoli in your lungs is greater than 100 meters square, greater than 100 meters square. So that's a lot. Okay, so, okay, then the third, concentration gradient. How do you think the concentration gradient is maintained? Now that has to do with function, not the structure. Function. Well, partly a structure as well. Because of this extensive blood supply, there is the constant extensive capillary network ensures that there is constant inflow of oxygenated blood. Sorry, a constant inflow of deoxygenated blood. Okay, and then constant removal of oxygenated blood. So the concentration within the capillary blood of carbon dioxide is higher. And also the concentration of oxygen in the alveolar space is maintained as well. I mean, it is kept high. How? By constant breathing movements. So as soon as the carbon dioxide concentration in the alveolar space increases, it is immediately exhaled out. And then new air is inhaled in, so that ensures that the oxygen concentration within the alveolar space is always high. And because of this constant bringing in of deoxygenated blood and the constant removal of the oxygenated blood makes sure that the concentration of carbon dioxide is high in the blood within these capillaries. Because it will be this concentration gradient because of which the oxygen will diffuse from a region of high concentration, which is alveolar space, into the region of lower oxygen concentration, which is the capillary blood. And carbon dioxide, on the other hand, will move from a region of high concentration, which is the deoxygenated blood in the capillaries, into the region of low carbon dioxide concentration, which is alveolar space. So I hope I made myself clear. Okay, yeah. So you will say that the concentration gradient is maintained by constant breathing movement and constant blood supply to the lungs, right? Now only 4 minutes are left. Let me see if we can do some questions. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, these questions. What is the function of the cilia in the respiratory passages? Use the chat window. What is the function of the cilia in respiratory passages? Yes, to move the mucus up to the throat, right? And therefore, the dust particles and the trapped dust particles as well, right? No, Amna, cleaning air is a very vague answer. Cleaning air is a very vague answer. You have to be specific. Okay, function of the cilia is to move the mucus, which has trapped the dust particles towards the back of the throat. What is the larynx? You have to be specific, okay, in your scientific answers. You cannot just say cleaning the air or moving the mucus. No, you have to tell how and, you know, moving where. Yes, Amna, voice box is the answer. What is the larynx? Voice box. Voice box is where you have the vocal cords. Okay, where does gas exchange take place in a human? Yes, across the alveolar walls of the alveoli. Yes. The more specific your answer is, the better it is. Okay. Like you can just say alveoli, but you can be more specific. You can say alveolar walls. Okay. How many cells does an oxygen molecule have to pass through to get from an alveolus into the blood? Yes, 2 complete cells. One is alveolar epithelial and the other is the endothelial cells lining the capillary wall. Very good. Okay. Have I missed anything? Let me just check. Only 2 minutes are left. Okay, I think I have shown you everything. Okay, let's just watch this last video. This is showing alveolar gas exchange. Alveolar gas exchange. So this is the alveoli. They're showing, they're zooming in to the alveolar. This is the alveolar sac. So this is a simplified diagram that I just also tried to make. Yeah. So you can see the layers of cells. One layer is of the cells lining the alveoli, the other is the one lining the capillary wall, and then you have the red blood cells within the capillary. So oxygen is entering into the alveolar epithelial cells first. So from that membrane, it entered, from the other membrane, it exited, and then it entered into the endothelial, exited the endothelial, and finally entered the red blood cell. Right. Carbon dioxide way is just the reverse. Okay, first to the endothelial and then to the alveolar epithelial cells. Right. So that's it. Okay. I can share these videos in the group if you guys want. Okay, so if there's any question, please ask. Okay, if there's any question, please ask. Otherwise, I am ending the meeting. Okay. Nose, nasal cavity, pharynx, epiglottis. Yes, you're most welcome.